In this episode, I want to look at layering and interweaving, how things layer and interweave through each other within an enterprise. So for this example, I'll use the enterprise of a town. So what are the services that make up a town? A town is an enterprise of enterprises. Everything is a service. So what are those services? What do they each do? How do they intersect? How does it all make it work? When layer upon layer of services, some are below ground, some above, how do they connect with each other? How does that all work? So IT, the classic focus of enterprise architecture, it's just one service amongst a vast number of others. Look around a town to see how many there really are. Some of the services are below ground. Water in this case, telecoms over here. What happens? We can't just leave them as fit and forget, because if they forget about them, they'll fall apart over time. Different shops provide different services within the enterprise of a town, each of them an enterprise. All sorts of different usages, changing, moving over time. This old 1830s fire service building was a private company until people realised that they had a huge incentive to make things worse. Then you have all the services that move through, like buses and cars. They all have to weave through a town. We've got other services of delivery. Here, Deliveroo, the food providers. Look at all the meeting places. Look at all the intersections of things. What happens if you have scarcity? In this case, scarcity of parking spaces. How do you allocate shared resources in a way that actually works for everyone? How do you manage all of that? And how do you deal with when new services have to cut across an old one? In this case, the new road cutting across the old road that's been there since Roman times. How do you make it all work? How do you get the services to interweave through each other without disrupting one or the other? And buildings change, things change. In this example, this used to be a chemist, as you can see from the sign in the middle of the screen. It used to be part of the Boots chain, which ran a large public library in the upper floor. But now it's just a betting shop. How do things change over time? And architecture often shows signs of an old technology. The stones here protect the wall from 19th century wagon wheels. That's the reason also why the downpipe is inset into the wall, so that it won't be scraped off. And often we describe things by what they used to be. This old building used to be the post office, and people refer to it as the post office, even though it isn't there anymore. So what happens in your organisation? How much do people refer to things by what they used to be rather than what they are now? Then you've got services that are forgotten and abandoned. This old cinema in the middle of the screen has been there for 30 years, abandoned, unused, replaced by another multi-seat cinema. But what happens when you've got a service that's sitting there doing nothing, an old legacy that is just taking up space? To me, this is one of the best illustrations of layering and interweaving particularly over time. Right here we've got the current main road coming past the town. This bridge itself is also a main road. It's the National Cycleway, route number 1, the Great North Road. Down below, against the roadway there, are all the signs of the regiments based in the town. This has been a garrison town for over 1,000 years. But think of these in terms of services always. Now, front is the pub called the Hole in the Wall. The reason why is because it's in a hole in the wall. The Roman wall, updated in medieval times, has been providing the service of protecting the town for all of that period. So the pub provides its services too, and the gateway provides control, a service of controlled access, no longer necessarily required in these days, we hope, but it's still there. So the gateway is still largely intact after almost 2,000 years. And we have other services too, litter, road signs. Looking around here, there's the gateway, the guardway. The pub was built in the 1650s. Behind it, we've got the Victorian water tower, Jumbo, which is no longer in use. The service is no longer required. And behind again, the Mercury Theatre, built in the 1960s, still in use if currently under repair, as can be seen through the gateway. And we have signage, like in this case, looking at the town, looking at the history. All of these are history, but all of these represent services either in use at the time and still often in use now. All of these services interweaving, layering, interconnecting through time and through the present time. So that's a real example of how layering and interweaving of services occurs in a large enterprise. Thanks for watching. Do look at the YouTube description for links to further detail. And don't forget to subscribe for other videos and also to support us on Patreon to help us produce these videos and the tools themselves.